Let us kindly take our seats, please. Your Excellencies will now progress to the signing of several memoranda of understanding, and allow me to invite the signatories that will start us off. And on behalf of the government of the French Republic, I would like to invite Jean-Noël Barrot to take his position at the signing table. Also, Honorable Hassan Ali Joho to kindly take his position at the signing table. This particular is a declaration of intent between the Ministry of Mining, Blue Economy and Maritime Affairs of the Republic of Kenya and the Ministry of Sea and Fisheries of the French Republic for cooperation in the blue economy and fisheries sector.
Messieurs les Présidents, déclaration d'intention sur l'économie bleue, signée pour la partie française par Jean-Noël Barrot, ministre de l'Europe et des Affaires étrangères, et pour la partie kenyane par M. Hassan Ali Joho, secrétaire d'État pour les questions minières, économie bleue et les affaires maritimes.
The objective is to share best practices on developing maritime special plan, safety, security, and sea collaboration in fisheries. After the signing, we'll then just request that you stand up, hold the document for a photo opportunity. Have it closed as we give them a round of applause. Thank you. I'll request that Jean-Noël Barrot please remain as you're still signing the next one. And allow me at this point to invite Honorable James Opio Wandai, who is the Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Energy and Petroleum. This particular memoranda of understanding is Government of French Republic in cooperation in the peaceful uses of nuclear energy.
Déclaration d'intention sur l'énergie nucléaire pour la partie française, Jean-Noël Barrot, ministre de l'Europe et des Affaires étrangères. Pour la partie kenyane, James Opio Wandai, secrétaire d'État au ministère de l'Énergie et du Pétrole.
The objective of this particular memorandum of understanding is security, diversification of its energy mix, the adherence to highest international standards of nuclear safety, security, and non-proliferation. Again, once they have signed, we'll request that they then stand up for a photo opportunity after exchanging the documents with a handshake. Then display for a photo. Thank you. I'll request that the two signatories can retreat and take their seats, and allow me at this point on behalf of the Development Agency to invite Moline to take his seat at the signing table, together with Honorable William Kabogo, who is the Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Information, Communication and Digital Economy.
Troisième accord sur l'amélioration de la connectivité et transformation numérique au Kenya. Pour la partie française, M. Tristan Aurel Moulinet, directeur adjoint de l'Agence française de développement. Et pour la partie kenyane, M. William Kabogo Jitao, secrétaire d'État au ministère de l'Information, des Communications et de l'Économie digitale.
The Memorandum of Understanding is to facilitate collaboration in the preparation of projects supporting Kenya's digital transformation priorities with the objective of expanding digital connectivity, improving access to digital public services, strengthening digital skills, innovation, and entrepreneurship. After the signing, we'll request that they exchange the documents and then have a photo opportunity. Thank you. You may both retreat. At this point, allow me to invite Rudolf Sade, Chairman and CEO of CMA Terminals, together with Dr. Chris Kipto, Principal Secretary, the National Treasury.
MOU entre CMA Terminals et National Infrastructure Fund. Pour la partie française, Rodolphe Saadé, président directeur général de CMA CGM. Et pour la partie kenyane, Chris Kipto, secrétaire d'État au Trésor national.
This is an agreement between CMA Terminals and Government of Kenya. And the objective is managing and operating new container terminals capacities at the port of Mombasa for large container vessels. Again, the objective is managing and operating new container terminal capacities at the port of Mombasa for large container vessels. After the signing, you can then exchange and a photo opportunity. Thank you. You may both retreat. The next agreement is just going to be an exchange. They've been pre-signed, so I'll just request the parties that are involved to take their position, hold the document, display for a photo without necessarily signing. So allow me at this point, on behalf of, to invite Moline, Simek, and also Engineer Peter Njenga.
Il s'agira d'échanges de Marocains, les signatures ont lieu plus tôt. Lettre d'intention sur le barrage de Massinga, pour la partie française, Tristan Aurel-Moulinet pour l'Agence française de développement. Pour la partie européenne, M. Simek pour la délégation de l'Union européenne. Et pour Kengen, Peter Njenga, président directeur général de Kengen.
This is to collaborate in potential implementation of the Rising of Masinga Dam project, contributing to Kenya's dam safety. Thank you very much, gentlemen. You may now take your seats. The next has also been pre-signed. Allow me to invite Jean-Sebastien Kaz and Mr. Edward Muriuki.
Déclaration d'intérêt pour le renforcement des capacités du service météorologique et climatique du Kenya. Jean-Sébastien Kaz pour président de MFI pour la partie française et Edward Muriuki, directeur général pour la partie kenyane.
The agreement is to cooperate on modernization of Kenya's national meteorological services. Thank you very much. You may take your seats. Allow me, Christian Barjon to take his position, and Captain George Kamal.
Protocole d'entente entre Ruby Energy et Kenya Airways par Jean-Christophe Bergeron, président directeur général de Ruby Energy, et George Kamal, président directeur général de Kenya Airways.
The MOU of the Memorandum of Understanding is on sustainable aviation fuel production in Kenya between Ruby's Energy and Kenya Airways. Thank you, gentlemen. Next, allow me to invite Dr. James Mwangi, MD, Chief Executive Officer, Equity Group Holdings, and Mr. Karanja Kinyanjui and François Xavier.
Il s'agit d'accords sur les thés kenyans. Pour la partie française, François-Xavier Delmas, président du Palais des thés. Pour la partie kenyane, James Mwangi, directeur exécutif de Equity Group Holdings Limited. Et Karanja Kinyanjui, président de Gatanja Industries Limited.
This is off-take and promotional agreement between Palais d'Etat, Gatanga Industries Limited, and Equity Group Holdings PLC. To facilitate purchase of premium purple tea varieties and promote Kenyan specialties. Thank you, gentlemen. I'll request that Dr. James Mwangi kindly remain, as the next one you still are part of it. Then invite Elizabeth Clavier and Moses Nyabanda.
Il s'agit d'un protocole d'entente entre Equity Group et le CIRAD sur le thé et d'autres produits agricoles. Madame Elisabeth Clavry de Saint-Martin, directrice générale du CIRAD. Et pour la partie kenyane, Monsieur Mwangi, président exécutif de Equity Group Fondation. Et Moses Nyabanda, directeur de Equity Bank Limited.
The Memorandum of Understanding is between Equity Bank Limited, Equity Group Foundation, and French Agricultural Research Center. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You may take your seats. We have two more to go. So allow me at this point to invite Dr. Kenneth Namunje and Thierry Dieu.
C'est un contrat commercial entre Meridian et KPLC. Thierry Déo pour la partie Méridien, directeur général de Méridien. Et pour la partie kenyane, le Dr Kenneth Mamunje, fondateur de Craft Skills Energy Limited.
The statement of intent between Meridian SAS and Craft Skills Energy Limited on establishment of Kipeto Surai Energy Limited. Thank you, gentlemen. We'll now proceed to the last one and allow me to invite Thomas Fauzier, Jeremy Gauget and Philip J. Mainga.
Pour le dernier contrat commercial pour le lot 1 de la réhabilitation de la ligne 5 du Nairobi Commuter Rail, pour la partie française, Jérémy Goguet, directeur général de Unifair, et pour la partie kenyane, Philippe Manga, pour le Kenya Railways Corporation.
The contract between Kenya Railways and L5 Consortium, UCE, on modernization of Nairobi Central Station to Embakasi Village, Line 5. Thank you. We'll do a retake on that. I think he was already on his way to get the railway going. He could not wait to get the railway to Embakasi. Thank you. With that, Your Excellencies will now progress to a joint press statement from the two heads of state to the members of the fourth estate. So we'll now progress to hearing a joint press statement from the two heads of state. Welcome, Your Excellencies.
Your Excellency, President Emmanuel Macron, distinguished members of your delegation, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I had the distinct honor and pleasure of welcoming President Emmanuel Macron on his official visit to Kenya, taking place at a historic moment as Kenya co-hosts Africa-France Summit in Nairobi under the theme Africa Forward, Africa Finance Partnership for Innovation and Growth. Kenya is deeply honored to host this summit, the first to be held outside France or a Francophone African country in more than 5 decades. This reflects the evolving nature of the Africa Finance Partnership and Kenya's growing role as a convener of regional and global dialogue. The summit brings together leaders, business people, investors, and innovators to advance practical cooperation in areas such as infrastructure, innovation, green growth, and development financing. Kenya and France have maintained strong diplomatic relations since 1963, when France was among the first countries in the world to recognize Kenya's independence, for which we are truly grateful. Over the years, this partnership has evolved into a broad and strategic engagement across multiple sectors. France is one of Kenya's leading economic partners, with strong portfolio of investments supported through the French Development Agency, particularly in renewable energy, urban mobility, and climate-related projects. Our cooperation also extends to education, skills development, and innovation. Through partnerships between Kenya and France and French institutions, as well as the FD-supported programs, we are strengthening technical training, higher education, research capacity, and many other areas to support Kenya's industrial and technological transformation. We have held extensive bilateral discussions aimed at deepening cooperation in trade and investment, particularly in manufacturing, renewable energy, pharmaceuticals, digital innovation, and agro-industrial development. Kenya is a competitive production and logistics hub for East and Central Africa, supported by special economic zones and a growing industrial base. As part of the strengthening of the strategic partnership between Kenya and France. Our two countries today signed right here 11 instruments aimed at deepening cooperation across strategic sectors of our economies. Among the key instruments signed today is the rehabilitation and modernization of the 83 million euro or 12.5 billion Kenya shillings Nairobi commuter rail, which will serve as a central pillar of our urban transport modernization program. The Nairobi Commuter Rail 5 is expanding and upgrading key commuter rail corridors linking Nairobi to satellite towns such as Syokimau, Embakasi, Ruiru, and Kikuyu. New extensions, including the Ruto line, currently under construction, will further improve connectivity across our metropolitan city. In addition, we signed an agreement establishing a joint venture to develop and finance logistics and port infrastructure, an investment of $800 million. We also signed an agreement to facilitate the purchase of premium purple tea varieties and promote Kenya's specialty teas across French retail networks, creating opportunities for value addition and high income for our farmers. Mr. President, tomorrow at the dinner, we will be serving some Kenyan tea that looks like French wine. Another important agreement signed today supports Kenya's digital transformation and connectivity, enhancing different acts in our space. Kenya is building a dynamic digital economy that is driving innovation, competitiveness, and regional integration through flagship initiatives such as our Concert Technopolis and our digital superhighway. We discussed opportunities to deepen collaboration in digital infrastructure, digital public services, cybersecurity, data systems, and artificial intelligence as Kenya continues to strengthen its position as a leading technology and innovation hub. Additional bilateral agreements signed today cover cooperation in the blue economy and fisheries, the peaceful use of nuclear energy. And I had a conversation with the President on their use of nuclear energy to drive their transformation. And we are preparing and right on the way, Mr. President, to having our first renewable energy from nuclear. And we want to thank you very much that you are willing and able to support Kenya on this very important transformation program, because we need to generate at least 10,000 megawatts in the next 7 years. We also enhanced our cooperation, including modernization of Kenya's climate and weather services. As I told you, Mr. President, Kenya is a country that has 85% of our landmass is arid and semi-arid, and therefore weather predictions are very important. We are also a farming nation, and therefore the support to our weathermen is going to help us have greater accuracy and be able to inform our farmers in good time about weather patterns so that we can be able to do better in that space. Production of sustainable aviation fuel in Kenya, collaboration in agricultural food system transformation, and the expansion, of course, of our green energy with Kipeto Wind Energy Development Project, which will target an additional 100 megawatts at a cost of about $250 million. We also emphasized the importance of enhancing air connectivity between Kenya and France to support growing trade, tourism, and business engagement. At present, limitations in frequency, capacity, and routing constrain the full potential of direct links between our two nations. These measures will directly support increased tourism arrivals from France, facilitate business and investment flows, and strengthen the movement of high-value exports such as our fresh produce, flowers, and seafood to the European market, leveraging, of course, on our economic partnership agreement that is signed between Kenya and the European Union. We welcome the growing partnership between Kenya and France in advancing research, innovation, and digital skills through initiatives supported by the French Development Agency and the Pamoja program. President Macron and I agreed to strengthen cooperation in digital health, laboratory systems, and epidemic preparedness, including the improved use of real-time data for early detection and response. This will enhance healthcare delivery and strengthen Kenya's capacity to respond to future outbreaks, including managing our extensive program on universal health coverage in Kenya. We also welcome the deepening cooperation in education and skills development, particularly in STEM and technical and vocational education and training. The state-of-the-art University of Nairobi Engineering and Science Complex, at a cost of 35 million euro, is now moving into implementation phase with the designs finalized, procurement underway, and contractor onboarding expected later this year. Just for your information, Mr. President, Nairobi University is my alma mater. So, at the same time, the Higher Education Engineering Equipment Support Project will equip four of our universities with modern engineering laboratories and equipment for mechanical, electrical, and civil engineering training. These investments will expand hands-on training, strengthen teaching capacity, and produce the skilled engineers and technicians needed to drive Kenya's industrial growth. And we can share this very high-skilled labor, Mr. President, with France if we establish official, structured channels of overseas employment of Kenyans. On regional and global issues, we reaffirmed our shared commitment to multilateralism, climate action, and the reform of the global financial architecture to ensure fair and predictable access to financing for developing countries. I want to thank you, Mr. President, that you have undertaken that we will have a robust conversation on Tuesday on how France can work with us and work with the rest of the G7 on how to enhance African financial institutions, including ATIDI, so that we can use those institutions to leverage more resources from our pension funds, from our insurance companies, to make resources available for development of infrastructure and other facilities in our continent. We also agreed that the Africa-France Summit must move beyond dialogue to implementation with a clear focus on investment, innovation, and partnerships that deliver measurable results. We are confident that the outcomes of this summit will strengthen economic cooperation, mobilize financing, and support Africa's development priorities. Kenya remains committed to deepening its partnership with France and advancing a forward-looking model of cooperation anchored in investment, mutual benefit, and shared responsibility. We view this summit as a turning point towards a more balanced, action-oriented, and results-driven Africa-France partnership. Ladies and gentlemen, I have extended our gratitude to President Macron for the confidence demonstrated in hosting the Fresh Africa Summit, the first ever to be hosted by an Anglophone country in Kenya. Mr. President, I want to promise you that we will not disappoint. And the confidence you have demonstrated in Kenya confirms to you that you have friends on this other side. And you can count on our partnership, you can count on our friendship, and you can count on our collaboration and cooperation. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now my pleasure to request His Excellency the President to make his statement. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear William, my dear friend, ministers, ambassadors, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your words, Mr. President, and for your warm welcome. And I'm pleased to come back on Nairobi 7 years after my first trip, my first official visit in your country, and it was the first visit ever of a French president. And which was honestly completely crazy to imagine. But the past 7 years have been quite a journey, I have to say. We did a lot together, and we increased our relationships from bilateral point of view, but as well we increased our intimacy. And we always appreciated your commitment to African and global issues. And this is why we decided to have this African Forward Summit being organized here in Nairobi, and thank you very much for that. Let me switch to French. Cette amitié franco-kenyane n'est pas feinte, Monsieur le Président, et vous le savez, cher William. Elle s'explique d'abord par une vision que nos deux pays ont en partage, qui est celle d'un ordre international ouvert, fondé sur la règle de droit, attaché à un multilatéralisme efficace. Et la variété des accords que nous venons de signer l'a parfaitement montré. Je n'oublie pas non plus, non simplement votre présence, mais votre engagement à l'été 2023, lorsque nous avons signé à Paris le pacte pour la prospérité des peuples et de la planète, où vous avez été un dirigeant particulièrement efficace pour bousculer les institutions internationales et arriver à des solutions concrètes. Je sais à quel point le Kenya s'efforce, par votre entremise, de faire entendre la voix de l'Afrique dans l'élaboration de solutions internationales, durables, pour un continent évidemment si jeune, mais dont la jeunesse est une chance, et qu'il s'agisse d'architecture financière internationale, de climat, d'agriculture, d'infrastructures, d'éducation, vous êtes toujours aux avant-postes. Et ces impératifs, la France les soutient, vous le savez. Aux côtés du Kenya, nous travaillons sur cet agenda, et il s'incarne d'abord par la relation bilatérale. Nos deux pays ont une relation exemplaire à bien des égards sur l'ensemble de ces sujets. C'est d'abord et avant tout un partenariat qui est équilibré. Le Kenya brille par ses talents, de l'athlétisme à la musique, nous l'avons encore vu récemment.
In the digital economy, which attracts many French stakeholders, and this has been proven in the facts through the past few years. In 2012, there were only 35 French companies had invested in your country, and we have 140 today with 36,000 direct jobs. When I look at the past 3 decades, we have roughly 3 billion euros invested, and over the last decade, this was 1.8 billion euros invested by France, and today we signed for an amount of over 1 billion euros of French investments. So we've managed to build something together, which is a new relationship which I think, and you reminded us of the content, is there to live up to your challenges. We want to invest in human capital, and that's the idea between the investments we want to make at the University of Nairobi, the university, Mr. President, your alma mater, of course, for which we would like to support the building of a new building complex for science and engineering, and we also carry partnerships with the best higher education schools in Paris, France, in Saclay for engineering, artificial intelligence, and other disciplines of the kind. And through these partnerships between innovation, research, and education, it's a whole future generation of engineers from Kenya who will be working on the new models of artificial intelligence and solutions for climate resilience, which is a good thing for the country and the region. So France is mobilizing its know-how in key sectors for growth and innovation in Kenya. Energy infrastructures, digital infrastructures, which are your priorities. And that's the reason for which French businesses are investing and believe in the potential of Kenya. CMA, CGM, which has just committed to renovate 2 terminals of the Mombasa port for a total investment of 700 million euro. Meridiam, which is going to extend the second largest wind farm in the country for $225 million. And in total, through all of these projects, there's over 1 billion euros worth of investment that have just been signed. The projects, the contracts we have signed today, which is a result of the past month's work or year's work, have allowed us to improve the livelihood of Kenyans through a new electrical plant, a power plant, and the new railway and signaling system to release the pressure on the capital, the renovation of the Masinga Dam, the new digital highway to extend the fiber connection to most of the country, and a partnership on long-lasting fuels, on sustainable fuels, between our respective companies, and the improvement of our partnership for climate monitoring and weather monitoring to be put to good use for smart agriculture, and our partnership in the production of tea, the sophistication, the upgrading and the increasing of the added value of your tea through the partnerships that we have signed. And talking about power and energy, the partnership that we've just signed is one in the field of civil nuclear energy. Partnerships by Meridiam for wind farms. Well, there's our common will to build something long-lasting, and this is our partnership for civil nuclear energy. What I'm saying here, Mr. President, is that you're partnering with France and committing to France is something that testifies to your trust and something that we consider important, because civil nuclear energy in France is something that we've been building since after World War II, and that we've very often shared with trustworthy partners, and this allows us today to produce 75% of our electricity in France, which is low carbon. When we talk about civil nuclear energy, we're talking about something essential for our country. So we know how to produce it in a safe way, in a sustainable way, in a fully secure way, and this is not something that we're selling. It's something we use at home with public companies, state companies that have deployed this. So over and above what the President said, what I wanted to remind you about our bilateral partnership, as you probably understood, is an opportunity for us to build a wider partnership through the organization of this first Africa Forward Summit. And tomorrow evening, Mr. President, you were kind enough to welcome 35 heads of state and government from Africa, and 50 or so delegations that will be coming as well, be mobilized as well. The first day we will have a day at the University of Nairobi to highlight the different partnerships between companies or initiatives heralded by companies. We will have a CEO forum with over 6,000 participants, which is totally unprecedented on the continent, and you can be very proud of it. This goes to show the attractiveness of Kenya and of this partnership. We also have innovations which will be presented, and the African youth will have an opportunity to speak up, and we'll talk about sports, industry, culture, and anything creative, and there will also be creative things with PPPs, public and private funding. And we will also make announcements of new investments by French companies on the African continent and investment by African companies in Europe. The second day at the International Conference Center, the KICC will be working on seeing how to advance towards finding a solution to the international crisis, and the UN Secretary General will be present as well. And we'll work on how we can reform the international financial infrastructure, and we will defend this at the upcoming G7 meeting in 1 month's time. And then we will try and speed up the reform of the African financial infrastructure with the African Development Bank. We'll talk about health, sovereignty, competitiveness, connectivity. I mean, this is a real premiere. And only by the number of people mobilized, heads of state, CEOs, I mean, this is a real premiere and already a great success. So, how exciting to look at the future, and I would like to thank you, Mr. President. Now, tufa ni kazi pamoja. Asanteni sana.
With your permission, Your Excellencies, we'll now take
Avec votre permission, nous allons prendre 3 questions de la part des membres.
House you represent, and keep your question as short and crisp as possible. To the questions.
Monsieur le Président, ici. Oui, je m'appelle Emmanuel, Post Citizen TV. Just one question. Are you concerned that some of the countries in the Western Africa region are not part of this conversation? You know, those countries in the Sahel region. Just that question. And to my President William Ruto, how is this going to affect our partnership with other bilateral friends? And of course, how does it fit into your plan to transform Kenya into the first world country? Because you've mentioned it. Thank you.
Do we take all the questions at once, or one and we answer?
Your Excellencies, if with your permission, we can take the 3, then have them answered all at once. So if we can move to the next 2 questions, please.
Bonjour, hello, Cyril Ben-Simon de TV5 Monde. Une question, first question to President Ruto. With President Macron, you have now a long relation. You've just signed several MOU on different issues, but what makes France a different partner from the others, up to you? Au président Macron, une question. Avec ce sommet Africa Forward au Kenya, vous confirmez votre volonté d'ouvrir la diplomatie et l'économie française à d'autres horizons, mais n'est-ce pas aussi une manière d'éviter l'Afrique francophone?
Avoiding the French-speaking part of Africa, where France found itself in trouble recently.
France Télévisions, la question s'adresse au président Emmanuel Macron. Nous venons d'apprendre que l'Iran menace...
With immediate response in the case of French and British deployment in the Strait of Hormuz. But this means that the mission of Charles de Gaulle is no longer valid, and does this question the mere principle of the maritime coalition? And of course, with the recent events in Algeria, are you optimistic for the framework for the journalist called Christophe Glaise, and will you return soon to Algeria? Thank you.
Between Kenya and France is a relationship between friends, and in Kenya, and Kenya has interests in a relationship with France. And I have said this is a relationship that has been built since our independence. France has been our friend. It's among the first countries to recognize Kenya's independence, and they have walked with us that journey ever since. And therefore, we have relationships with other countries, we have relationships with other partners, but the relationship with France is special. Special because there is a very personal relationship between President Macron, myself, and Kenya. And that relationship has earned us the place where we are today. The first summit signaling a shift to a broader, much more inclusive relationship with Africa, recalibrated with the understanding of respect for sovereignty, being a relationship that is mutually beneficial, and a relationship that recognizes Africa's position and priorities is what we are having here. And President Macron chose Kenya because of that very special relationship. And number two is because we have a robust development program between France and Kenya. France has supported our energy generation. France has supported health issues in our country, transport issues in our nation. We've just signed off education, a robust education program that will cover our universities and our TVETs, very well aligned with the priorities of my administration and the priorities of Vision 2030, Kenyan Vision. On the airport, we have agreed on what to do in the airport space. We have agreed on what to do on agriculture space, smart agriculture. We share very common positions on the reform of the international financial architecture. I have taken time to brief my brother, President Macron, on the National Infrastructure Fund, a mechanism we established recently, and how they can participate so that we can leverage more resources. And I'm truly grateful that he has offered to work with us and work with the Africa Development Bank, which I met earlier today, to assist ATIDI, which is our insurance facility, so that mechanisms such as the National Infrastructure Fund, which targets Kenya's development, can be assisted to leverage private sector resources, pension resources, insurance resources, crowding in with other partners so that we can have adequate resources to run our development program. And therefore, this Africa-French Summit and the bilateral relations between Africa and France speaks to Kenya's transformation, because the tenets and the aspirations of the summit and the relationship between France and Kenya and the relationship between President Macron and myself are very key to unlocking the potential for us to be able to drive our development. And I have briefed my brother, President Macron, on matters to do with transport and logistics, energy, and agricultural transformation. You have been following what I have been canvassing in Kenya, and those are the three primary areas of investment that we are targeting if we are to move Kenya to a first world country. On transport and logistics, you've already seen the signing of the agreement on the rail, the commuter rail in Nairobi, the discussions we've had on the airport, the discussions we've had on the port of Mombasa and other ports. That speaks to my first pillar of transport and logistics. You've also heard that we are leveraging on France's technology and long-term engagement with nuclear energy. You heard President Macron say 75% of their energy is nuclear energy. Save nuclear energy. And this is a program they have engaged in since the Second World War. Therefore, Kenya is going to benefit from France's understanding of nuclear energy as I drive the transformation of our country. You know very well, I have said, we need to generate 10,000 megawatts of energy in the next 7 years, and one of the interventions is going to be in nuclear energy as we expand our generation in geothermal, hydro, wind, and solar. And finally, on matters to do with the agricultural transformation, I'm very happy that our tea farmers will soon be getting better prices from their purple tea and all the other farmers in that space. I'm very happy with the agreement that has been signed. But I've also explained to President Macron that there exists investment opportunities in our dam construction because we now have a water purchase agreement for commercial water. And we are looking at companies from France that can work with us on the construction of the 50 mega dams that I have announced so that we can take the transformation of Kenya in the right direction. Finally, somebody has asked me what is different between France and others. Every relationship is unique, and therefore we have different relationships with different people. And I keep being asked this question: are you looking east or are you looking west? And my standard answer is that we are looking forward.
As for the first question, Emmanuel, I want just to clarify the fact that Western African countries will be present. I mean, President of Senegal, President of Ivory Coast, President of Gabon, President of DRC, and many others will be here. It's hard to say that Western Africa will not be present in this room. You have 3 countries, and I do regret that, which decided, because of the coup and the behaviors of the military people in charge, to put them aside from the rest of the club, by the way, aside of ECOWAS as well and others. It doesn't mean that West Africa is not part of this meeting. The biggest leaders of Western Africa will be here. And beyond that, we've been very vigilant to have civil society, even from Sahel states, being present. Because we can disagree with some of these governments, quote to quote, but we never disagree with people. We love these people. In Mali, in Burkina Faso, in Niger. So all these people are involved in this conference and in this summit. And we will have a lot of intellectuals, academics, artists, entrepreneurs coming from these countries being present. C'est un peu dans la continuité que je répondrai à votre question. Je n'ai jamais pris...
As being just one block. Our backyard. And this is something I said as of November in the speech I gave in Ouagadougou. So we have no desire with this Africa Forward Summit after the one that was held in Montpellier in 2021. There's no desire to hide anything. No, it's just a way of saying Africa is a whole, and we are really Pan-African, and we believe that Africa is a continent, and that the continent has a lot to build with the youngest population in the world, a fantastic demographic dividend, and with the greatest growth in the world. The growth of Africa was just higher than Southeast Asia's. So we have to take a different look at Africa. And indeed, it is a continent that I want no longer France to consider it as our backyard, quote unquote, or in which our CEOs would have guaranteed contracts or partnerships because it would be in French-speaking countries. No, or because France would give some kind of guarantee or insurance that things would happen. No, and that's over since 2017, because way before 2017, our companies had started losing market shares in French-speaking African countries because Africa is a competitive ground. I mean, and rightly so, and because I believe that we need a well-balanced partnership. And a fair partnership. So the transformation we've been carrying out for the past 10 years is based on state sovereignty and territorial integrity. There's been a coup in Mali. You don't want France to be in Mali because you don't want us to fight terrorism. Well, we'll just leave. No offense. No offense. But the events have shown that this wasn't not the best solution or the best option for Mali. And I would like to pay tribute to our soldiers here who fell. Too many of them fell for the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of Mali between 2013 and 2001. But we really rethought or revamped our relationship based on security, not to pull out, but to rebalance things wherever there were bases that were too obvious, that were the remnants of past times. We transformed these French bases as elements of partnership, like we did in Gabon, and we refounded our relationship in Benin, Ghana, Gabon. We reinvented it in Western African countries, and it works. And it gives us excellent results in Benin and in Nigeria. We rethought our economic relations. The summit testifies to it. We reshaped the cultural relations, and I mean, when talking about the restitution of cultural objects, the people are saying France would never agree, but it was a true attempt. So we're showing that there is a well-balanced partnership. Western African countries are here, are present, and France, when we see what we've been able to do over the past years with Benin in security, and when we see what we've been doing with Gabon, and what we've done with the president of Senegal, and we'll see tomorrow when we see what we're doing in sports, in culture, or in reinventing our partnership in security with local academies. I mean, we're doing wonderful things. We're transforming things, and we are creating something unprecedented in the relationship between France and the African continent. Now, Kenya, no French president has visited before my visit in 2019. I mean, South Africa has created a strong atmosphere of competitiveness, but I could mention what we managed to do in the past few years with Morocco, or to tell you more about our relationship with Portuguese-speaking countries. So I'm looking forward too. And I can see that we have transformed quite a lot of things in the past 10 years, and we've never avoided French-speaking African countries. I was in Gabon last spring, and next fall I'll be in Gabon, Senegal, and Côte d'Ivoire. And those are French-speaking countries, so we're still moving forward, and we're present through our renewed partnerships with all of these countries. Now, to answer the last two questions that were put to me on Iran and Algeria. On Iran, I think there's a lot of confusion. I think we need to calm things down. You talked about a deployment, quote unquote. Now, there was never any deployment taken into consideration or imagined. No, I decided a few years ago to move the Charles de Gaulle and the frigates that it was escorting and the whole air and naval group over to the eastern Mediterranean, to Lucerne. It was never a deployment, but we are just ready. And from the beginning, from day one, we say, okay, freedom of navigation. That's the motto. We have to put an end to any blockade, whoever is holding it, and refuse any kind of toll and allow free navigation. We discussed this with the president. The whole African continent has fallen victim to the blockade since the Hormuz Strait was blocked. So we never envisaged, I mean, so look at all of our declarations, we never thought about any kind of deployment. That was not what France wanted. We deployed an ad hoc mission co-steered with the British authorities, bringing together 50 countries and international organizations to allow, in a concerted manner, to come into a dialogue with Iran and to ensure, as soon as conditions may allow it, to allow for free circulation in the Strait of Hormuz and free circulation, free maritime traffic for fertilizers, oil, and any kind of other goods. I don't know who is commanding, but this is what France has to say, and I can only call for everybody's quietness. I mean, there's too much talking and too much excitement, even in words. And I think we're all the victims of what is going on now. Our fellow citizens in France are paying the price of a war we never wanted. So today, let's try and remain calm and prioritize a peaceful reopening of the Hormuz stage and have priorities in an adapted ballistic and nuclear framework. And France is fully respectful of the rule of law and international law. As for Algeria, I'm really happy of what happened in the past few years. The trip of the Minister for Armed Forces to Algeria, and the good discussions they had with President Tebboune, the Chief of the Armed Forces, and the delegations that ensued. And as I said, during the last few weeks, my obligation is to defend the interests and the rights of the French citizens. And our common interest is to have a peaceful or a peace relationship and constructive relationship with Algeria, which needs to be respectful on both sides and bring solutions on all topics. And the events during the past few months were very deleterious to France and Algeria, and it's not what I want. So my wish is to be pragmatic and to serve the interests of our fellow citizens, to find solutions that are humanitarian and migratory, economic or regional, but to construct solutions that are responsible and accountable. And I think this is one first step forward. We've already seen a few signals from Algeria, and I think the reconstruction of our relationships will be developed with esteem. So once again, allow me to thank you, President Ruto, for the words you mentioned right now on the trust in our partnership. And he said far better than I could ever could say how strong our common wish is to look forward for both our countries and for the African continent. And there was always a deliberate will when we talked about the relationship with different European countries and Africa to look towards the past. We always wanted to develop new relations. It's the whole spirit of bilateral relations. It's the whole spirit of our joint chairmanship of the Africa Forward Summit and the renewed partnership in all fields. And this is what is going to allow both our countries to succeed and to succeed with Africa. And I'm very proud to be here with you tonight and with dear William. Thank you for hosting the event.
Allow me, Mr. President, to conclude just saying two things. Number one, we can speak for ourselves as Africans. And I want to say, and to congratulate President Macron for having the courage to recalibrate the relationship between Africa and France, to make it more inclusive. It's not about Anglophone, Francophone. I think broaden the conversation, make it much more inclusive, broaden the engagement, make the engagement mutually beneficial with shared responsibility. We understand as African leaders that we too have responsibilities. This relationship is not going to be one-sided. We will be expecting from France as they will be expecting from us. And they will be giving as much as we are giving. That is the win-win, mutually beneficial relationship. And that relationship that President Macron is now championing, a relationship of equals, is the correct template for our relationship. Not thinking about aid and loans, but thinking more about investments and about what Africa can offer. We have real assets. We have young people, demographic dividend. We have natural resources. We have energy resources. These resources count for something, and we want a balanced relationship, and that is what this Nairobi summit is about, and that is what the Nairobi Declaration will be about. And I want to be very clear that what President Macron is doing, recalibrating this relationship, is actually what we want as Africans. This is how we want the relationship to be going into the future. And finally, on on the challenges we have at the Strait of Hormuz and the problems we have, I was having consultations with my fellow heads of state earlier today from Sierra Leone, from Senegal, and all of us are affected. You know, fuel prices, oil prices have gone up by between 20 and 30%. We've just come out of COVID. We've suffered the consequences of the war in the middle of Europe, and now we have another situation. For those of us on the receiving end, you know, because this is no longer about 2 or 3 or 5 countries. It's about many countries and many people and millions of people. The sooner we find a resolution, the better for all of us. It is our very strong belief and urge that the people concerned should not just consider their interests, they should also consider the interests of millions who today are paying the price of the war in that corner. So whatever that can be done should be done so that we find a resolution and we find a ceasefire and we find a resolution of the conflict there. And President Macron and your colleagues in the EU, you please deploy your diplomacy and all other assets that you have to see how we can bring this to an end. Otherwise, ladies and gentlemen, it was our pleasure to have you. President Macron, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of the joint press statement. I'll request that we remain seated. Kindly let's remain seated to allow the photographers to get their shots as His Excellency Dr. William Ruto sees off His Excellency Emmanuel Macron after a wonderful time. So please remain seated as His Excellency sees off his colleague, and we call it a night for today. Thank you very much. Do have yourselves a wonderful evening. Take care of yourselves.